Those of you in the press, because we only have 30 minutes, please, one question. Don't ask two or three questions at one time. It'll take up half of our press conference. So every journalist, one question, that's all, okay? When you ask the question, please stand with your name and organization. And let me introduce our distinguished panelists, and then I will turn the floor over to, I'm going to ask the first question, and then I'll turn the floor over to you journalists, okay? We'll try to get, and I would ask, this panel is a very distinguished panel, and I hate to ask this question of you, but can you limit your answers because we have so many of you here and only 30 minutes, so I've been asked if you will please make your answers short. Again, sorry about that. So let me introduce everybody on the panel here. Starting on this side with Mr. Murat Karimsakov. He is the chairman of the Eurasian Economic Club of Scientists. That's the chief sponsoring organization of the Economic Forum. And we have Dominggo Kavalló. He's the former minister of the economy of Argentina. And then we have Kristofer Pissarides. He is a Nobel Prize winner in economics. We have, well, I'm here, and then we have, let's see, Mr. Min Ju, Deputy Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund. My handwriting is bad here, so Alejandro Hara, Deputy Director General of the World Trade Organization. Роберт Манделл, another economics winners, Nobel Prize winner in economics, and Роберт Прескотт, a third Nobel Prize winner in economics. So I'd like to ask the first question to Professor Mandell. I was listening to your speech this morning, and your speech about how an ideal sort of global currency right now would be a currency with a stable exchange rate between the dollar and the euro, and then if it could be lined up with the yuan or the yen, that would be even better, according to you. Will the crisis in the Eurozone have any impact on your thinking about a de facto global currency that involved in a stable exchange rate between the dollar and the euro?
No, it doesn't have any effect on that because we had a period of fixed exchange rates that worked very smoothly under the Bretton Woods system from 1946 to 1971. And then that broke down, not because there was any problems with fixed exchange rates and the adjustment process. The adjustment process is just the same as it is between California and New York with a common currency, and between Ireland and Germany with a common currency. The adjustment system is the same. The reason the Bretton Woods system broke down was that there was nothing that prevented inflation of all the countries, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War inflation, and that made gold undervalued. And that was the problem. It was a gold problem, not an exchange rate problem. Now, the problem in Greece right now, we should learn a lot from that, because the important issue that it was assumed in the run-up to the euro was that each country is going to be accountable for their own debts and for their own deficits, and there were restrictions on the deficits, and there was no not a strong enough central authority to impose those restrictions, partly because Germany itself, which had been running deficits when it was creating the new regime in East Germany, was running deficits too. So we have to learn a lot from the euro crisis, but it doesn't change the basic principle that these two big behemoth currency areas in the world, the dollar and the euro area, if they wrench the world in half, they split the world into two parts if there are big swings in the exchange rates. And that's the only way. There's no possibility of an international monetary system at all if those big swings aren't abated.
Thank you, Professor Mandelл. And we've just been joined by Pетко Dраганов, the Deputy Secretary General of UNCTAD, right here to my right. First question from the reporters.
Thanks. Frank Kane from the national newspaper of Abu Dhabi in the Emirates. We just heard a pretty strong attack by Prime Minister Erdogan on the credit ratings agencies and their actions regarding the Turkish economy. Could I ask you what you thought he meant by that and for your views on the situation?
Anybody want to take that? Mr. Prescott? Dr. Prescott?
How to set up a system with good credit agencies that don't get captured by the regulatory system is hard. We don't have that yet anywhere. But they seem to be better than nothing. But they're far from perfect. A lot of things were getting high ratings because in the United States, if you switch up these subprime mortgages into little packages of them and in trenches, etc., what it's done, the rating agencies gave it a high rating, and the various financial institutions could hold it subject to the laws. But people like to have a rating so they know where to put their money. But maybe we can rely on the market instead.
Dr. Mandell, you want to?
Make a little comment that I think the rating agencies failed abysmally to warn about the European crisis. The problems of Greece and Italy were apparent long before the crisis shot, and they should have been able to predict it. But there's a little bit of a consanguous relationship between the ratings and the people that are being rated. And that's now changed. They learned a lot. The rating agencies learned a lot. Maybe they went too far. They made sudden big shifts away, and they've imposed this. But I think that with this, they're going to be much better in the future than they were in the past. I know that one of the rating agencies in China, Dagong agency, made a vicious attack on the rating agencies and said that because of this, the government should set up their own rating systems. But the problem, if you have government setting up a rating system, nobody's going to pay much attention to them because they're going to be tied up too much with the self-interest of the policies of those countries. So it's not a perfect system, but you look at each of these rating agencies, they have tens of thousands of studies on each of the things that they rate, and I think that they're better than nothing.
Okay, next one.
Diana Rogozina from Economic University, Russia, Yekaterinburg. Do you know about the first World Economic Forum? It was yesterday, and very much young people from all over the world came to Astana to participate with the modernization of economic. And also, yesterday was decided. I would like to ask you what you think about this forum and Youth Nobel Prize. Thank you.
Anybody want to take that? How about one of the Nobel winners? I think what you're talking about is a prize that goes to the best young economist in Kazakhstan. Is that what you're talking about? There's a new prize that's going to go to the best young economist in Kazakhstan, as far as I know. That's what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. One of your Nobel winners or somebody want to talk about that?
I heard about a prize that goes to the best young economist in the world. I didn't know there's a prize for the best young economist in Kazakhstan, but it's a good idea.
There are many countries in the world that have prizes for the best young economist interpreting young under 40. The American Economic Association has one that is quite famous. It's called the Clark Medal. The European Economic Association has one. It's called the Euro-Johnson Medal. Italy has one. Greece has one. Spain has one. There are many, many prizes. There isn't one that is global, but there are lots of individual countries that have some that are very prestigious. In fact, in the United States, the Clark Medal is probably the best predictor for the Nobel Prize. A lot of those who win the Clark Medals win the Nobel Prizes 20, 30 years later. And now the European Economic Association has introduced a prize for the best woman economist in Europe, and we just had the first winner, in fact. So there are many of these young prizes. Another one will not do any harm, but there are many.
Mr. Karamsakov, did you want to talk about that?
About your question. Спасибо за вопрос. По молодежной премии имеется в виду премия Астанинского клуба лауреатов Нобелевской премии, который был создан в прошлом году по инициативе 7 лауреатов Нобелевской премии под руководством уважаемого профессора Манделла. И вы знаете, что вчера стартовал молодежный форум на площадке Евразийского национального университета, главными организаторами которого являются высшие учебные заведения России. Среди них это Уральский государственный экономический университет, университеты Казахстана, это университет экономики и финансов, Евразийский национальный университет. И мы поддерживаем это мероприятие. И вы знаете, что на площадках виртуального форума Астанинского экономического клуба ученых, форума и клуба ученых проводится очень много конкурсов для стимулирования как молодого поколения, так и молодых ученых, исследователей. И в этом плане мне очень импонирует инициатива профессора Манделла по учреждению премии молодым ученым, экономистам. И мы сейчас после форума обсудим это с нашими уважаемыми профессорами, с нашим организационным комитетом и объявим вам о результатах. Спасибо.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Trieb from Neue Zürcher Zeitung, Switzerland. I would like to ask Mr. Jara from WTO how confident he is with the progress in trade liberalizations here in Russia and in Central Asia and in Kazakhstan, of course, also. Thanks.
Well, let me say that, first of all, worldwide, I think we observe two phenomena which are contradictory. We have a negotiation under the WTO, the Doha Development Agenda, that's been stalled now for several years, since 2008, and we have not been able to enter the concluding phase of that negotiation. But at the same time, we have a great deal of liberalization taking place on the basis of bilateral, plurilateral, regional trade agreements, and some of them involve Kazakhstan and Russia, etc., because they recently formed a customs union. Russia has finalized its negotiation to join the World Trade Organization. It should become a member very soon once it ratifies its agreement. And Kazakhstan is very well advanced, and we hope and trust that it will be possible for them to conclude the negotiations by the end of this year. So I would say that I'm pretty optimistic that as we speak, many countries are liberalizing their trade, maybe in the not most efficient way, which is multilateral, but certainly all their trade policies are pointing in the right direction, while they are, most countries, I would say, containing protectionist pressures from arising in the middle of this crisis. So I think that, at least from the Kazakhstan and Russia point of view, the fact that they are making efforts to join the multilateral trading system and what they have done in terms of the disciplines, adapting to the disciplines of the WTO, etc. I'm optimistic that they will continue to liberalize their trade and contribute to achieve better multilateral trade liberalization all around.
Thank you, Mr. Hara. The lady in the pink here.
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Татьяна Цапенко, журнал. Погромче? Ага. Татьяна Цапенко, журнал Time KZ. У меня такой вопрос. Сегодня собрались все экономисты, чтобы решать проблемы мира. Как бы не секрет, что в мире бедность, люди находятся за чертой бедности, существуют страны, где люди голодают и так далее. Вместе с тем, как бы на нашей планете хватит еды для всех. Вот, такой, может быть, из области немного метафизики, да, или как философии этот вопрос, но, возможно, есть экономическое решение. Возможно ли однажды в нашем мире, что все люди будут жить примерно в одинаковых экономических условиях? Собственно, наверное, экономика для этого и существует, вот мировая экономика. Возможно, что нам нужно для этого всем сделать вместе? Ну, конечно, мне бы хотелось услышать ответы, может быть, нобелевских лауреатов. Ну, кто захочет.
Do you want a particular person to answer the question, or? Okay.
Кто хочет? Кто захочет? Кому интересно?
Okay. Some of the panel doesn't quite understand the question. What? Yeah. Oh, okay. Can we get a translation of the question?
Не понимаю. It's very difficult for me, but I'm trying. Is in the world one way to save our world from poor? Can you help me?
Global crisis. You're talking about global crisis.
Ты можешь, если в мире существует один способ спасения этого мира, бедности, чтобы все страны...
Is there any chance to save our world from the poor people, to get all countries to be rich, to be independent, without war, without poor people in living?
Thank you for the question. This is a very good question. First of all, we observe in the past 20 years with globalization, the income inequality increased dramatically. And particularly in the advanced economy, the top 1%, top 10% increase their incomes times, but the bottom 10, bottom 20 increase very small. So, which deteriorating the income situation. That's very true. That's also the reason we emphasize inclusiveness of the growth. So we want to make sure, number one, the growth where they require more job creations, so more people will get job, number one. Number two, and also we want to make sure the fruit of growth will be equally distributing among the peoples. I think it's absolutely important now. So inclusiveness growth become a top issue for everyone. I think it's very good news. More and more government recognize the importance of inclusiveness of growth. But I have to admit there's still a long way to go to improve the income inequality issues. Yeah. But there's a way to get out. There are many policies, frameworks to tackle this issue as well. Yeah, we need working hard. We need to work together.
Thank you, Mr. Zhu. The lady in the black here. Lady in the black, yeah.
It's Birgit Brauer from The Economist. I have a question for Petko Dраганов and for Zhu Min. Actually, two questions. President Nazarbayev said in his presentation today that...
Can you make it one question? I'm going to give one more question to the audience.
Okay.
And then,
well, keep it brief. But Nazarbayev talked about Kazakhstan having attracted over $150 billion in FDI. If you look at Kazakhstan, also compared to, like, say, Azerbaijan or Russia, other oil-producing countries, what have these countries done right or wrong? Where could they have done better? And let me try to smuggle the second question. As far as corruption, corruption is a problem in all these countries, but yet we've seen economic growth, and at the same time, corruption seems to increase accordingly. Is there any way we can actually fight it, or should we just accept it? What is your point of view of that?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'll keep it brief as well. I think, starting from the last, no, we should never accept corruption. I think corruption is one of the reasons that we have inequality, and we stand firm against corruption. And the UN as a whole has a policy fighting corruption. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, has specific programs that help member states fight corruption and facilitate trade, and we are working with the Kazakh government on some projects. But on what they're doing right, I think it is very important, and I think President Nazarbayev talked about this, diversification. Countries that depend on commodities like gas and oil need to diversify so that they can be less vulnerable to external shocks. And this is, I think, the crust of the matter for us. Thank you.
Mr. Zhu, if you don't want to answer the question, I'll have, this is the final question right here, is this gentleman.
Thanks, Chair. Tim Harcourt, the airport economist from Australia. I have a question for Professor Pissarides.
Good eye, mate.
G'day. Good to be here. Great to be here in Kazakhstan. The OECD's just nominate Australia as the best economy and the best quality of life for its people. Yet for many years, Australia had strong trade unions, a strong minimum wage, strong incomes policies, as opposed to the free market views of Margaret Thatcher and the US, where they went the opposite way. We now have the lowest unemployment rate. Do you think that's a lesson for the emerging world as Kazakhstan and other economies take the way forward in the labour market?
I would agree that the best system for the emerging world is not completely free markets of the type of the kind we've been campaigning for in Europe. The problem that Europe faced was that institutions were being built up piecemeal, one at a time, and there wasn't a good coordination between them. And then in some countries, like Britain in the late 70s, early 80s, even Germany in the late 1990s, the economy became completely dysfunctional. It was impossible to innovate. It was impossible to get productivity rises. So there was urgent need for reform. But reform doesn't have to be of the kind that completely liberalizes. In fact, in Germany, I wouldn't say there's been complete liberalization. Part of the success of Germany in the current recession is the fact that there's been very innovating subsidization of jobs and setting up of new businesses by the unemployed, and also there's been effective use of short working during the week with the help of government policies and trade unions. So I would never argue that complete liberalization. Even within Europe, in fact, I don't know what the OECD thinks, but if you look at life satisfaction tables within Europe as to which countries are doing better, I think Denmark is always top of the list, and Denmark is far from a completely free market economy of the Thatcher-Schroeder type by any stretch of imagination.
Well, I think the panelists have to move on to other things, and then there's lunch. So thank you very much for coming, and I learned something. I hope you did.